Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. This video is on ReactJS V18 version 18, which is the latest version, CRUD example. So we are going to do entire create, read, update, delete operation sample in this video. So what is ReactJS? ReactJS is a JavaScript library for building single page application. ReactJS comprises components that make our code simple and easy to maintain. Okay, React is a component based application. Okay, so every piece of code is separated into small component so that we can easily develop our application and maintain our code. Okay, so React components are simple JavaScript functions which return JSX. Okay, so React component is nothing but a simple JavaScript function and it's written JSX, JavaScript XML, which is nothing but a HTML that returns from the almost looks like HTML that returns from the function. Okay, to create a React.js application, our local machine should contain node server. Okay, so node server is helps to pull the all required libraries for creating the React.js application. So go to the Node.js download page and based on your operating system, download the software and install on your local machine. Okay, and to create a React.js application, React provides a command. So search like create React app. Once you search, you can see a link here. Click on it. Okay. And here is the command. Okay. npx create React app space name of your project. So using this command, we can create the React.js boilerplate project. Okay. So copy this command. So open the terminal, paste the command. I am going to rename the project name. So I am name it like React 18 CRUD demo. Okay. So run it. So while running it, it's try to pull all the required packages that are required to run or support our React.js application. Okay. Wait for few minutes. And here we can see our project got created. Okay, now we have to open our project in our editor. Okay, one of the most recommended editor is Visual Studio Code. Okay, you can search like Visual Studio Code download. Okay, and click on the link, and based on your operating system you can download the installation file and then you can install into your local machine. Okay, so I have already installed my Visual Studio Code. So let's open the project in Visual Studio Code. So here there are few instructions how to open the project. Okay, first we have to go to the root folder of our project. Okay, cd space. Okay, now from here we can easily open our VS Code editor. To do that, code space dot and enter. It will automatically opens the project in Visual Studio Code editor. Okay, here is our React.js project, and to check the version of our project, go to package.json and look for the React library and its version. See, React library, 18th version. Okay, so now let's explore the existing files inside of this project. Okay, if you go to the public folder, you can see index.html. Okay, so this is the file will get appears on every request to the user. Okay, this is the only HTML file available in our project. Okay, we have mentioned that our application is a single page application. So only file when the user requests a React application gets is this index.html. Okay, and everything, every code that get painted due to the React.js will be added into this div, okay, where id equal to root is there, right? Under this root div, every React component gets rendered. So that's about the index.html. And next, go to src and go for the index.js. So index.js is the entry file to our React.js application. Okay, this is the entry file, and here you can see some JavaScript like logic getting the root element. See, in our index.html we have seen root div, right? So somehow it is manipulating to render all the React component data under this element. Okay, so this is the entry file, and from here we can remove few codes that we no need while learning. Remove the web vitals method and its reference, and also remove the react in strict mode. Okay, so our index.js looks like this, and here you can see some custom element tag like app. So this app is nothing but the entry component of our React application. I have mentioned, right, React is comprises of component. So this is the entry parent of all components, app component. So such like app.js. Okay. So file will be .js only, but it is a React component. How it will be React component means I have mentioned its component is a simple function. You can see simple app function, and it returns JSX content. JSX content is nothing but the HTML only. Only few things will be get deferred. Like if you see in general in HTML we use class, right? Here we have to use like class name. Okay, so there are some syntactic difference. Very few, very few. Uh, so it is HTML only, but we call it as JSX. Okay, so this is how our code look like this. Okay, and one more convention is this app component, sorry, any Angular component must be start with capital case. Okay, first letter must be capital case because this function will be rendered as a element here. So if it is a lower case, that is general HTML element. If it is a capital case, that is React component element. Okay, and that's about the app.js and index.js. And next file is package.json. So in general, package.json contains libraries and dependent libraries and the commands how to run the application. Okay. So to run the application, it is very simple. Open the terminal. Okay. So command is like npm start. And here we can see our React.js application running under localhost 3000 using the development server. Okay. So by default, our React application when we run looks like this. Okay. Now what I will do, I want to remove this default content. As a first step, I want to add the sum menu. So for adding menu or using any UI components, I want to use the React.js Bootstrap. Okay. So such like React.js Bootstrap. Okay. Click on this. So this is the React.js Bootstrap documentation. It's just built on top of the Bootstrap. If you want to use Bootstrap directly, you can use, but it is recommended to use the React Bootstrap because all the UI components it provide, we can use directly into our Angular application without any changes. For suppose if you want to React.js, then you have to change something like one of the main thing like class name. In general, in React Bootstrap, normal Bootstrap HTML, you can see class name, class, right? Everything must be changed to class name. So instead of using normal Bootstrap and changing everything, it is better to use the React.js Bootstrap. Okay, click on Get Started, and here you can see the installation command npm install react-bootstrap bootstrap. That means it's it is two commands. It is installing both React Bootstrap and normal Bootstrap libraries. Okay, copy this command and go to our terminal, open one more terminal, okay, and paste the command and install it. Okay, our Bootstrap library is successfully installed. To confirm it, go to package.json and look for the references. Here you can see Bootstrap reference and the React Bootstrap references were added. That means our package successfully installed. Okay, now let's try to add a Bootstrap menu. Okay, so where we can add? One thing is you can add in the app.js. Okay, so instead of directly adding in the app.js, let's think differently. So menu should be appeared for every page in the application. Means it is a common thing, right? So let's create a separate component like layout. So where we can add menu and footer if whatever the common things for a application, we can create it there. So layout is like a theme, master template like that. Okay. For that, let me create a folder structure inside of the component, create folder like shared. Okay. Now inside of shared, I am going to create the my layout.js, nothing but the layout component, React component. So we know that convention component name starts with capital case. Okay. Layout.js. Okay. So this is my component file. So we know that how to create a component. It is a function and name first character must be capital. Okay, simple function, and this function must be exported. Okay, and function has to most probably returns the JSX code. So JSX code means nothing but HTML. You can return div or any paragraph, p tag, any tag. For suppose if you want to create a imaginary text, simply open the braces. This is called imaginary text. Okay. So this is my layout component. Now here I want to add the Bootstrap navbar component. Okay. For that, go to Bootstrap website. Okay. Click on the components, and here you can see the navbar. Okay. You can see n number of examples here. Okay. You can copy any one of those examples. Okay. Let's copy this navbar. Okay. And paste it inside of our imaginary tags. Okay. Everything is a component, React component. Every element is a React component. Okay, but don't scare, no need to learn everything at a time. You can learn them slowly, but for now think them as navbar is one component, container is one component, and a nav tag, it is one component. Those are components from React Bootstrap. Since we are using those components, right, we have to import those namespaces as well. So here you can see navbar, nav, right? Copy them, these three namespaces, and add them here. Okay. So this is my navbar. For now, I don't want any nav element. Okay. And this demo is I am going to show the if fruits, collection of fruits and prices, a sample example. Okay. So I will name my application name like fruit bucket. Okay, and here BG means background color. It is showing dark, right? I want to get the some green color. I can use success, and variant will be dark. And here there will be a one more expand. Okay, LG. This is for the screen sizes. Okay, and one more thing. After installing Bootstrap, I forgot one thing. We have to import the Bootstrap CSS file in the index.js file because that is the entry.js file, right? So here we have to import the Bootstrap file. So bootstrap slash list slash css slash bootstrap.min.css. Okay, that is the thing I forgot. Now get back to our layout component. So now we have added our navbar menu, right? So where we have to render this? We have to render this in the what is our entry React component app component. Here we have to use. So let me get rid of all these things. Okay, and add the layout element. Okay, so simple function name will be used as a tag here. Okay, see, name also imported. Okay, so let's run and check whether our menu is rendered or not. Okay, nothing is coming here. I am expected a menu bar. So what happened? Sorry, I named my background color wrong, missing C. Okay, now I think it should come. See, now it is coming. So Bootstrap menu bar is added with the heading. And I want to display some welcome message as a page content. Okay, where I have to create. One thing is every component should have single element. Okay, you cannot create like this double divs. Okay, see here red line arrow is showing. Okay, that means I have to create the content inside of it. So let me write like welcome. Okay, now check. But it is not displaying. That is because any content that is inside of any tag, okay, component tag, React component tag, that if you want that content to be displayed, then this content to be passed to this component. Okay. So how can we can pass means we can use the advantage of props. Okay, so these props is nothing but a default. It's going to give either any default properties. So we can pass some properties here. Okay, custom properties like this. Either props can read these properties or the content inside of this through these props. Okay, now we have props. I can read the content inside of the tags. For that, what I will do, I will create one more container. Okay, and here I want to render. So to render any HTML or a string or a expression, okay, dynamically inside of the React application, we have to use flower brackets. So these flower brackets are used for rendering a HTML content or a string content or any expression based content. Okay, so here inside of this I want to pass the content of the inside of the element tags. So to pass that I can use props, and to get the content we can call children. Okay, children. So this children gives the this content inside of it. Okay, now let's check whether we are able to render our welcome message or not. See, now I got the welcome message. If you want, you can give the HTML as well. Let me wrap it around h1 tags. Okay, see, now it is little better, right? So this way we can render the content inside of our element tags. Okay, now we need to have a API, right? In general, we are going to consume in real time. We are going to consume some real time server API, right? For this demo, to mainly concentrate on only the React.js application. Okay, as a React.js developer, I no need to concern how to create the API like that, right? For that, we can use a fake JSON server. Okay, we no need to write any code for that. Okay, by running simple commands, we can set up a fake JSON server in our local machine. Go to JSON server, such like JSON server, and click on this npm. Okay, and go to the GitHub. And here you can find every step-by-step documentation in this GitHub README document. Okay, so first thing, what we have to do means we have to install the JSON server globally. For that, this is the command. Copy this command. Okay, open the terminal anywhere. Okay, anywhere in your system. Okay, and paste that command npm install -g and JSON server and run it. Okay, then it's going to install the JSON server in your local machine. Okay, then we have to start the JSON server for us for our demo. To start a JSON server, this is the command. Here you can see, right? JSON server -watch db.json. So this is the command to JSON server. What it will do means, wherever we run this command in that folder, it's going to add a db.json file, simple JSON file. Okay, in that JSON file we can add our data like a API response, dummy data. Okay, then if you ask, okay, by default, this DB JSON server also runs under port number 3000. If you access that, you can get your dummy data as a API response. Okay, very easy and very simple for the learners who don't want to know about the API calls. This JSON server is the perfect thing. Okay, because we can implement everything: create operation, read operation, update operation, and delete operation. Every operation is supported by this JSON server. Okay, to start the JSON server, we have to run this command. But I have mentioned this also runs under port number 3000, and our Angular application also runs under 3000. So two applications cannot run under same port in a machine. So for that, we have to use different port number for our JSON server. So such like port. Here you can see there is a one more command with port where we can specify the port number as well explicitly. Okay, so copy this command. For my demo, what I will do, I want to create and run that db.json server within my ReactJS application itself. So what I will do for this demo purpose only, okay, in package.json, I am going to create a command to run the JSON server. Okay, so JSON run, this is my command name, and here is the command. We have to copy the command. This, not this one, this one. Copy the command. Okay, and double quotes, paste it here. I want to run my JSON server on port number like 4000. Okay, so my React application runs on 3000, my JSON server application runs on 4000. Okay, now let me run this JSON server. For that, let me open one more terminal. Okay, and to run this command, npm run, and what is the command name? JSON-run, right? So enter it. And you can see all default some API routes like post, comments, and profile. So let me copy this sample URL, okay, and paste it over here and see some response is coming. Okay, so each URL here it is showing is right one API. Okay, like that you can configure n number of endpoints in our local system. How these are coming means, okay, whenever whenever we run this command for the first time, it's going to create a db.json file. Okay, if you search like db.json, see, this is not the react.js file. This is the file created because we have run our JSON server command. Okay, so whatever the JavaScript object or a JSON object you have given here, that will be come as one endpoint. See, this root object is one endpoint, post endpoint. Okay, and this comments endpoint is one endpoint, comments. Like that, whatever root object property name will be one endpoint. Like that, it will show. For me, let me clear all these of default things and let me name it like fruits. That is my endpoint name, and I am getting array of fruits. Okay, so property like ID, name like apples, and quantity like 2 kgs or 3 kgs, and cost some 200, and some image URL. Okay, for displaying, for nice display, I am going to use some random image URLs. Okay, some random URL. Okay, this is my Fruits API response, and this is the Fruits API endpoint. If you save it and observe the console, new endpoint will be generated. If I scroll down, here you can see new endpoint is automatically generated. If I copy that endpoint and paste it over here, see, whatever the response I added, right? All that response will be coming. And I want to show few more things like documentation. So here are the routes, okay? Some example routes. So in general, our all CRUD operation depends upon get request, post request, put request, delete request, right? So for every request, JSON server, these are the endpoints, sample endpoints. That means we can use this server to implement all our CRUD operations. Next, we are going to implement the read operation. Read operation means I am going to consume this API, okay, in my React.js, and this response I am going to render as some cards, nice cards I want to display, which means read operation, reading from the server and displaying on the UI. So next we are going to implement that read operation. Now we mainly focus on read operation. In create, read, update, delete, these makes CRUD operation, right? In that first let's do read operation. Read operation means consume the API, get API, and the successful response must be rendered on our React component on our UI page. Okay, and we know we set up fake JSON, right? JSON server in our local machine. So this is my fake response with the fruits. And here is our get endpoint, right? So if I call, I am going to receive this response. Okay, so I am going to use this endpoint. So how did I know what is get endpoint means? In the JSON server GitHub documentation, you can see either with the plural routes or the singular routes. Okay, slash name of your route means it will fetches all the records from the JSON server. Same way, slash name of your route slash ID, it fetches single record from the JSON server. For save, slash, simple slash, and we have to post the payload. And for put, slash with the ID and the payload. Like that, from here we can made or create our endpoints. Okay, now this is my get endpoint. Now I have to consume it from my React component. Okay, so for that, let's create a new React component. Okay, so we have already created a component folders, right? Inside of it, shared folders. Okay, so I am not going to create my new component here because the component now I am creating will be like a page. Okay, and the folder here components you are seeing, right? Here we are going to create components like small shared or small components which do not require routing. I'm going to create here, but the component I'm going to create is like an entire page. Okay, so I'm going to create a new folder like pages. Okay, in that let's add my new component like all fruits.js. So in this component, I am going to invoke the API call and I am going to display the content. Okay. This separation and folder structure is not mandatory. It is our convention. How better we can define the folder structure in our project. Okay. Now let's define the component. We know component is a simple JavaScript function, React component, and its name should start with capital case letter. Okay. And it should return JSX, nothing but a tags. Here I am returning the imaginary tags and export default our all fruits we should export. Okay. Now in this component we have to invoke the API call, right? For invoking API call, there are JavaScript methods for invoking the API call. Instead of using the JavaScript methods, okay, there is external library which is recommended by everyone to consume the API call, that is Axios. Okay, for that library helps for invoking the HTTP request calls. Okay, first let's install that Axios in our project. Okay, search like Axios npm and click on the link, and here you can copy the command. Okay, npm I stands for installation Axios. Okay, now open the terminal, paste the command and install the package. Okay, package successfully installed. Now we have to call the API call, right? Now I want to call the API call once this function is our component is rendered. So what I will do, I will directly create Axios call here. Okay, so Axios dot get. Okay, and here we have to pass our endpoint. So we know our API endpoint, right? Copy that and paste it over here, and then listen for the response. Okay, so here I am going to get the response. Okay, so this res response, from this response we will get data. So this data is nothing but our array of whatever the response. Either it will be array or object based on the API response. Here is my array of fruits. Okay, and we have to assign it to the variable, right? So what we think, we can create a constant. I will name like all fruits variable name, and initially empty array. Once the data comes, we want to assign. This is the first thought we will have in our mind, right? And this variable can be used to bind the data, but we cannot use constant here. Why? Because its initial value empty, right? So that gets rendered. When our API call returns the response and assign it to the variable, HTML will not refresh because it is a constant variable. Once this React component function executes, normally on change of normal variables, it won't refresh the data. So you cannot use constants like this. So then what we have to do? We can use some of the React hook techniques. Okay. In that, for storing the data, we will have a method like use state. We have to use state. Okay. So use state. Okay. And to this use state, we have to pass initial value. Initially, I want to have the array, right? All fruits. So I have to pass the array, and it should be assigned to variable like a array. Okay. What is that array means? Constant all fruits. So to this first variable in this array will take this value. Okay, whatever initial value or whatever the state value will assign to this property. Okay, this is a normal variable, comma, next set all fruits. These names are our own names. Okay, so this set all fruits is a function. It is not a variable. So what is this function means? If you want to change the any value of the state, we have to use this function to update the state. So once the value updated from the state, that value will be stored into this variable. Okay, so the set function is indirectly updates the value in the all fruit. Okay, now how this use state can render the data means, whenever the data inside of this all fruits or any variable of the use state changes, the entire function refreshed means re-executes, right? It gets re-executes. So now here I cannot assign all fruits directly. What I can do, I have to use the set all fruits variable. Set all fruits, and it is a function, and you can directly pass the value. So response dot data. Okay. One way is calling like this. Another way is we can input the arrow function. Mostly recommend to most of the cases recommend to use the arrow function because there are drastic updations in the state at that time. To get the most relevant data and exact data, it is always good to use the arrow function. So this arrow function will contain generally previous state. Previous state means what is the initial state? Initial state is the previous state, right? So what is the initial state? Empty array. So previous state will be the empty array. Means we can use this to update and generate the new state. Okay. So what I will return new state as response data. Okay. Either you can directly pass this to the set all fruits, or you can create a arrow function as the input parameter like this. Okay. Now there is a one more drawback here. What I have told, whenever all all fruits variable value changes, this entire function get refreshed, right? Re-execute means Axios will be executed. That means it's going to be infinite loop because first time when Axios call happens, the value of all fruits will be changing using the set values, right? So what it will do, for rendering the data, it again re-execute the all functions. But Axios is within the global scope of this all fruits, means it again re-executes. So we cannot call a API call directly in the component. Okay. So what I can use for so what I can do for that, I can use another React hook like use effect. Okay. So use effects contains two parameters. One is arrow function, the first parameter, and another thing is array. Okay. So in this arrow function, we can paste our code as just call. Okay. So how this Axios will work means, use effect will work means, it will execute this arrow function whenever there is a change in the variable. Means I can pass all fruits like this. Okay. Whenever the use state variables changes, this use effect arrow function re-executes. For suppose if this arrow is empty, means it will execute only one time. The arrow function inside of the use effects execute only one time, that too when the component is rendered. My case is also same, right? This API call must execute only once. So I will not pass any variable. So that is how use effect works. In general, if you want to execute a logic that depends upon the any use state variable, that state variable must be passed here. So whenever that passed state variable executes, this entire use effects will get executes. And one more thing, if you don't give this empty array and give like this, it is always equal to this line of code. Means if you don't provide the empty array, it always executes. Whenever any state variable changes, it always executes. Okay. So if you want to execute this code only once, you must pass the empty array. So that is my logic. So now if the API call is successful, I have all fruits. Now using this variable, I can bind the data into my HTML. And for the display purpose, each item I want to display it on the React Bootstrap card. So let's go to the React Bootstrap website. Click here and go to components. And here in the components, you have cards. So here I want a design. Here you will find number of options. In that I am going to select the design. I want to this design cards, side by side cards. Okay, so what I will do, I'm going to copy this. Okay, and I'm going to paste it here. So here what is happening? One row component, bootstrap, React bootstrap component, column component, and card component we are using. Okay, and there are namespaces we have to import. And paste it on the top of our function. Okay, we have imported namespaces as well. Okay, now here there is a example array. Okay, for looping. So here what I can do, I can remove this. And where is my array of response I am storing? Inside of the all fruits variable. So I can use that variable here. Okay, all fruits variable. So map is a normal JavaScript function, just it will iterate the item. Okay, here I will get directly item. Okay, now on the column we have to define a HTML attribute like key, and to that key we have to give the unique value. Okay, why we have to give means it is a normal React library convention when we are iterating the collection of items, and those items should be differentiated by this key value. Okay, if you don't give, it will give just a compiler exception. So we have to make sure to give it. Okay, so far so good. Just I am assigning my in the my response ID will be unique, right? So I am assigning the ID as a key. If there is another property unique, you can pass that as well. Okay, there is no mandatory to give the ID value. If you don't have the ID value, any unique property, then you can use the index value. Okay, that also fine. Since I have ID value, I am not care about any index value of my loop. Okay, now here. So here you can see SRC. I am having image URL property, right, in my response. So I want to render it here. For that, just remove everything with double quotes. We know, right, how to render the dynamic data in ReactJS. For that, we have to open the flower braces and pass it. So it should come from item dot, okay, item dot image URL, okay. And here title, I want to render the name of my item. So item dot name. Okay. Make sure property names are matching with our response. Okay. And here cart, what I can do, I have quantity. So quantity in kg units I want to display. Okay. Open braces item dot quantity. Okay. And copy it again. Or text, add it here. Let's add cost. Okay. And the cost. So like this we can render the data. So I am good because I am done with API call and I am done with the rendering the data. So now I want to render my component. Where my component I have to render? In general in React.js, app component is our root component, right? So go to app component. Here instead of this welcome message, what I will do? I can render my component. So what will happen in real time? You go to layout. Here in this place, our page content gets rendered. So that is the idea, navbar and the page content. So layout is like a our page layout, master template. Okay. So in the app layout, I can add my all fruits component. So name gets automatically imported. I think if everything is good, I am able to see my response data displaying on my React component. Okay, let's go to our website and make sure to run both our React.js application by running the command npm start and our node server, sorry, JSON server. If you have any doubts to how to run those commands, go to package.json. Okay, in the scripts you can find. So this is the command to start our application. So in the terminal you have to give npm space start. Similarly, for JSON server you have to give npm space run. Okay, for start only it is a optional. If you want to give, you can give like npm space run space start. Okay, here JSON run to run npm space run space JSON server, like that you have to start. Now if I go to my Angular application, see, I am able to see the content, right? But those boxes are very big, right? So let me change a little bit HTML. See, for medium screen, see, here I have specified two, means two columns I have to show. I will make it like three. And if you see excess means extra small, like mobile, show one column, that is good. Okay, and I want a gap between them like three. Okay, and let me add a height for also. To add height, I can use style property, and to that style open brackets, and in that we have to pass our style object. Okay, height 50. Here why I am giving two brackets means one is normal. Any expression if you want to render single bracket. So in this expression I am passing an object, my styles object like height, width, you can pass. Okay. Now let's check our output. Okay, images are shrink but little better. And if you inspect element and go to network calls, and if you refresh page again, now you can see the API call, my fruits API call, which is a get call, and it is showing status 200 means okay. And in the preview tab, you can see the response. These are the two items coming from my JSON server, my dummy data response, and those are rendering on my React component. Okay, so that's about the read operation. Next, we are going to focus on create operation. Now we want to implement the create operation. Previously, we did read operation, right? Now let's focus on implementing the create operation. Okay, for that, I'm going to create one more component. Okay, it is also like a page that will contain a form. So where we can create a new item using that form. So let's go to our pages folder and add a new component like add fruit.js. Okay, this is my new component, and we know how to define a component function and its name, right? And it should return JSX for now imaginary tags, and let's export the component. Okay, this is my component, and if you observe, now I have two page level components. Okay, that means I have to load them based on their route. So to load them based on their route, we have to install one more library, that is React Router DOM. Okay, so such like React Router DOM npm. Okay, click on the link. Okay, and copy the command. Okay, now install the package. And package is successfully installed. To confirm it, go to package.json and look for React Router DOM reference. So here is the React Router DOM reference. Okay, now I am able to configure the route. So now question arises like where I have to configure the route. If you recall in app.js, which is our entry component, entry React component in our application, we are loading the layout, and inside of it we are loading the add fruits. So instead of directly adding the all app fruits here. We can add router components and we can use routing to load them dynamically. Okay, so for that we can use router components that loads from the React route. Like I can import route like routes. Okay, and inside of it I can define each individual route. Okay, so route and import routes namespace as well. Okay, so those are importing from the React router DOM, which is the library we just installed. Okay, to this route tag, which is a child tag, we can provide some properties like path. So this path is nothing but our URL of our application. Okay, now I want to configure the component for home page. Home page means simple slash. Okay. And for this, I want to load one particular component that is nothing but all fruit component. Okay. So how we have to define? We have to define or pass our component as a one of the property value, that is property like element. Okay, to this element we have to pass our component. Okay, using the expression condition we can pass. Okay, like all fruits i can uh, I can use self closing tag. Okay, so now whenever we invoke home page, that is reference to the all fruits component, right? So it will be loaded. So now I can remove it from here, all fruits. Same way, now I have to configure route for my new component, which is a add fruit. Okay, now add one more route element and specify path. So I am specifying path like add fruit. Okay, this is my URL and element. To that element, I have to pass my component, which is the add fruit component. So namespace is automatically imported, right? So let's self close it. Now let's test whether we are able to load our components based on our route values. Okay, so since add component is empty, right? No content. Let me add a h1 tag, add fruit compo. Okay. So make sure to run both our Nest, sorry, React.js and our JSON server. So if I go to my application, I'm getting some exception. Yeah, I forgot one more thing. Since we are using routes and route components, right? So wherever it is using, that component should be wrapped around the browser route component. Okay, that also loads from the React route. For that, since this app component is where we are invoking this app component in the index.js. So go to index.js. Okay, so browser router. Okay, inside of it, pass our app component element. Okay, and you can see browser router also loads from the React DOM. Now, if I go to my website, I should able to see the content in my page. Okay, home page is working. If I navigate to add hyphen fruit, see add hyphen fruit. Now I am dynamically rendering my components based on the route value. Okay, so far so good. Okay, now let's focus on implementing a form in our add fruit component. So whenever user enters that component data, we can save it to the API. Okay, so to add a form here, so first what I will do, I will add a heading. So using the legend element, so like create, it is a create form, right? Simple heading. Now here I want to add the form. So to add the form with styles, let's go for the components, and here you can see the forms. Here there is a form tag and form elements, right? So first let me add this root form tag here, and also import the form tag namespace. Okay. And if you see here, email text box that comes from this form group. Okay. Copy this form group, single form group, add it inside of the form group. And from here, let's remove this form text. Okay. I just want form label and form control inside of the form group. Okay. Now, since this form control tag is there, right? This will render as a text field. Okay. And this label will be the label and it is a just grouping element. Okay. And here form control type is email is there, right? Let's change it to text. Okay. Text box field. Okay. So what I will do, if we recall our db.json, so if we go to our db.json, from here in the form, what kind of fields we required, name we required, quantity required, cost required, image URL required. So 4 text fields we required, ID will be auto generated, okay? JSON server will auto generate. So let duplicate this form group for 3 more fields, okay? And let's control ID will apply to form label and the form control as well. So name it like form name, okay, and label will be just name or fruit name, okay. And let me remove the placeholder. I don't want any placeholder. And the second field I want to enter quantity, okay. So it will be quantity. And instead of text field, I want to read it as a number. Okay, I will take it as number and remove the placeholder. And next field is cost. Name it like cost label and give the type like number and remove the placeholder. And finally, image URL. Okay, and it will be a image URL and it will be text only. Remove the placeholder. Okay, this is my simple form. And let's add a button here. Okay, so here I can copy the button. Okay, since I added the button, right? So what I will do, I will simply import the button namespace as well. Okay. And now button type is submit, right? So instead of submit, what I will do, I will use button itself so that form page won't reload. If you use submit also, we can avoid reloading by uh, type equal to submit, and but in the click event we have to write the e dot prevent, like normal reload operation we have to manually prevent, but instead of that I am going to use a type so that form won't reload the page. So this is my form. Okay, let's check it. See, now I got a nice create form. Now the thing is, whenever user entered some data, I have to read the data from these forms. For that, we cannot use normal variables, constant with simple constant variables. We can use the userefs. So that loads from the React. So useref can get the instance of the entire field, HTML field. Okay. So let's create a useref variable. So constant root name equal to useref, okay, and constant and useref root from the React. So I have four text fields, right? I want to create 4 variables, okay. Quantity, equal to use ref constant uh, price or cost. Okay, constant image URL. Okay, these are my variables. So I want to map them to the text field. Here we know form control will render as our text box. So to this we have to map our variables. So to map our variables to this form control, we have to use attribute like ref. In the expression, we have to pass our variable. Like here in this case, fruit name. Okay, like that. Let's map each variable to the each field. So ref, this is for quantity, and ref, this is for price, and next finally ref, this is for image URL. Okay, now on clicking this button, submit button, we have to post our form data to the API call, right? That means this button click must be registered to a method here. Okay, so first let's define the method. So constant add fruit handler. So handler extension just represent this is a click event handler. Okay, you can give any name and it should be assigned to the arrow function. Okay, so now in this function we have to define our API call. So we know our API call, post API call, right? So if you go to the JSON server, here you can see how to make the API call for each request. Okay, and we are using Axios, right? So Axios imported dot. So since it is a form post, right, means HTTP post request must be invoked for creating the item. So post method, okay, default methods, okay, and to this method we just pass our URL, okay. Along with this URL, second parameter is there. That is nothing but the payload of our form. So let's first prepare the payload of our form. Okay, where payload. So this payload properties must match with our API response properties. You go to db.json file, there are properties, right? So these property names should be matched for form posting. Okay, so let's create payload. So copy the name. So for name, I should assign the name of the fruit. So we know variables. We have user of variables, right? So fruit name dot current. So this current will give entire control over the rendered text field, text element. Okay. So from that I have to read the value, means dot value. This is the string value. Whatever the value that is entered in the form should be read like this. Okay. Same way, what is the next property? Quantity. And for quantity, we have quantity user of variable. So current dot value. Next, cost. So cost we have price user of variable, right? Dot current dot value. Next, image URL. So copy the property name, image URL. Okay. So I have image URL useref dot current dot value. Okay, here in db.json, if you observe, quantity and cost are numbers, means integer values, but name and image URL is string. But current dot value will always gives you the string from the text field. Okay, so here while posting form, we should post quantity and cost in numbers only. For that, first let's check whether the text field has value or not. if there is value, we should convert using JavaScript default function number. Just pass this entire value. If the text field is empty and we are submitting, just pass the 0 for our demo purpose. Okay, same way this also. Check for whether the value exists or not. If exist, convert it as number. If not exist, just simply send the 0. Okay, so we are ready with the payload. So the payload must be sent as a second parameter to the axios.post method. Okay, sorry, payload. Okay, then after successful API call, I want to navigate back to the home page from my add fruit component. So then, sorry, what then? Okay, I must navigate back to home page. For navigation, we have to use one more function. Let's remove this unnecessary import. Okay, and one more function like use navigation. Okay, so create a variable like navigate and assign use navigate. That loads from the React router DOM. So this has the capability for navigating from one component to other component programmatically. So now I can use my navigate variable to navigate to my home page. So navigate and specify the route. Home page route is simple slash right. That's it. Okay, we are done with the add fruit handler logic. Now I have to register this with the button. For registering, we have event like on click. Okay, so this is the click event in the React.js. To this, I have to pass my handler method name, that is add fruit handler. Okay, so assign it. And here one more thing, never open circular braces like a function call. What happened means when our component renders, this expression executes, and inside of it we are calling the function. That means handler fruit handler automatically execute while rendering component. Our logic is this method should be invoked when the button is clicked. Okay, so never open the circular braces. Okay, that's the logic inside of our add fruit component. Okay, now one more thing we have to do, that is, so to come to our create form, we should generally navigate from our home page. Means we should have a button. If we click that button, we have to navigate to our add fruit component. Okay, for that let me add a new button in the all fruits. Okay, for that first let me open the, sorry, let me add one more row here. Row, and I want margin top here. So class name, we know React form, if you want to define a class, we should use class name attribute. Okay, so margin top 2. Inside of it, let me define the all component of the React bootstrap. Okay, and this column should be displayed in the center. Means in general bootstrap divides one row into 12 parts, right? So my column should take four part of the column, and I have to leave the uh, 4 parts side by side. For that I can use md. So to this I have to pass a object. So to this expression I will pass a object like span 4. That means this column should take 4 units of place, and both sides it should leave 4 units of space, so that it will be in the center because row will be divided into 4 parts. For that, to leave 4 parts on both sides, I have to use the offset. In general, in Bootstrap, you can call MD4 and offset MD4, right? So that is same here. Okay, offset. Okay, now inside of this call, let me add the button. So what I will do here, I already have a button, right? So copy this button. So add it in the column and name it like add a new fruit. Okay, and let's remove this add fruit handler. I will create new one here and button will be type, and I have to import the button namespace. Okay. Okay. And here also on clicking button, I have to navigate, right? For navigation, we know we have to use the use navigate. So let me create a variable like constant navigate that equal to use navigate function. Okay. That is imported from the React router DOM. So now I have to create a method here, and that method should be registered to my add a new button method. So here my logic is single line logic for navigation. So instead of adding a new method here, I can write directly here. For that, I will use arrow function, and navigate variable I have declared, right? I will use navigate, and here I will pass the route. If there is a large logic, we definitely have to create a separate function here. Okay, because it is a single line of code that need to be executed for this click button, I am directly using arrow function. And now go to app.js, copy this add fruit URL, okay, and add it inside of this navigate. And so far so good. I think we are done with our implementation. Let's go to our website. See, add button is added. If I click on it, see, I am on the my create form page. Let me add a new item. Okay, some random URL. So if I click on this button, the form get post the entire form data to the server. So for that, go to developer tool and click on networks and go for fetch/xhr. Now click on the submit button. See, my new item is rendered here in my home page. That means successful post call is successful, and from my add form component to I am navigated back to the home page component because we have written logic, right? So in the add form component on successful API call, we just specified that our app should navigate back to home page. Okay. So if I go to network calls, if you see the first call, and if you go to the headers, if you see the request, it is a post request. And if you see the status from the server, created 201 created, that means item is created. If you check the payload tab, this is the data we have sent from our form. And if you see the preview, this is the response coming from the server. And here you can see the ID value, that is 3, which is auto generated. That means item is successfully added at the server. And while returning back to our home page, our normal get API call is invoked. And in that response, you can see our newly added record, and that is rendering here. That means we are successfully done with the create operation. Okay. So next we are going to focus on the update operation. Okay, now let's try to implement the update operation. Previously we implemented create operation, right? Now let's implement a update operation where it will contain update form so that we can update the item. Okay, so first let's add the page level component for update. Okay, inside of the pages folder, add like a new component update fruit. Okay, and we know how to create the React component function and name of the component. And name of the component first character must be capital letter. Okay, and it will return JSX. For now, I can return imaginary tags. And we have to import the XML, sorry, component. Now configure route for our update fruit component. So go to app component. Here we have to add one more route element. Okay, route, and we have to define the path. Okay, and I will give a route like edit hyphen fruit. So this is a static route, but for update form, we have to pass the item ID which we want to edit. So whenever The component is navigated with the item ID in the URL. Component will read the ID from the URL and then call a API call, and that API response will be populated into the update form so that user can update the data. So to get that edit form data, we need ID. So that ID we are going to get from the URL. Okay, so that means URL, some part of URL must contain the dynamic value. That dynamic value nothing but the ID. So to represent the dynamic placeholder, you have to specify like colon and placeholder name. Here colon and ID is my placeholder name. Okay. So whenever it renders, edit slash and your ID will be rendered on the UI. Okay. And next we know we have to specify the element, that is our update fruit. Okay. Either you can leave like this or you can use self-closing tag. When there is no content inside of the component, then you can directly use the self-closing element. Okay. Now what I will do, just think like ID is coming. Okay. So I want to read the data from the URL. Okay. So to read a ID value from the URL, we can use a function like use params. Okay. Use params that loads from the React router doc. Okay. And it will be assigned to a object, and in that object just specify the placeholder name. In our case, what is the dynamic placeholder ID, right? So copy that and add it as a property in this object. So use param automatically pick up the value of this placeholder from the URL and assign it back to this ID value. Okay. So now I have ID. So now I have to call the HTTP GET request by ID, which will return the specific record that related to the ID we requested. Okay. So how we can frame API URL? We can go to the GitHub link, JSON server GitHub link, and you can see a GET request sample here. Slash ID will fetches the particular record from the server. Okay. I am going to frame URL like this. So for that, so I want to load the item to edit in the component render, right? So what we have to, where we have to call our Axios call inside of the use effects. We know that. So use effects, okay. And first input parameter will be the arrow function, and second value will be the empty array. If it is empty array, this use effect will execute only once. Okay. Now here I can use Axios since it is a get call, right? Get, and now I have to frame the URL with the dynamic value. So use backticks, not double quotes, because here I am going to use the string interpolation for dynamic generating the string. Okay, backticks, and let me get my API URL. Go to add fruit and copy this. This is my normal API URL, and to make it get by ID slash, and here we have to pass our ID value. So to pass ID value dynamically, I can use dollar and flower braces. So it will generate a dynamic URL with the ID in it. Okay. So what is our ID? ID here is there, right? I can directly access ID. Okay. Then, then and response. So this response will contain response.data. From that data, we have to bind it to our form. Okay. So what I will do, I am going to get some code from our add fruit component. First thing is, let me copy the all the HTML content from the our add fruit component, because most of the things are common. Okay. So paste it over here. Okay. And form heading change to update. Okay. and form fields are same. And for now, let's remove the click event for the submit. Okay. Yeah, those are the changes required in our HTML we copied. And here there are fruit name and quantity like that variables, right? Those are useref variables. So copy those variables as well. Okay. So copying them from the add fruit component and add them here. Okay. And we have to import the useref namespace. Okay. So now I have to bind my response data to the form. For that, what I can do, I can use the useref variables. So fruit name dot current dot value equal to response dot data dot name. These are the response properties. Okay. This data contains our record object. Same way, quantity dot current dot value dot response dot data dot quantity, and price current dot value equal to response dot data dot, and what I can say, cost. If you have any doubts how the response object, you can use db.json file and copy these values data.cost, data.quantity like that. Okay. Similarly, last one, image URL current dot value equal to response dot data dot copy the image URL. Okay. So once the component is rendered, now data must be populated because we are invoking the get call in the use effects. Okay, and I have added form bootstrap form components and button component, right? But I haven't imported the namespaces. So let's import those things as well from our add fruit component to update component. Now the thing I want to do is I want to add a edit button on each card of the item. Okay, for that I have to go to all fruit component, and here under the body card I can add a button. So let me copy the button from here. Okay, button name will be edit button and primary color. Okay, button type will be button, and I want to use the navigate method only, so I will use arrow function simply, but I have to change the navigation value. Okay, so we know dynamic value, right? Dynamic URL, right? We have to add, so we have to use backticks and go to our app.js, copy this edit fruit string and paste it over here, slash dollar and flower braces. I can pass item.id. Okay, so whenever this edit button clicked, we are going to navigate onto the update form. Let's test it. Button little big, right? So what we will do, let's copy this button and paste it inside of the card body. Okay, now it is little better. Okay, now if I click on the edit button, let's open network calls also to check the get by ID API call. Okay, click on edit button. See, all my form data automatically populated into the form. And if you see here, this is my get request and dynamic URL ID value is passing here and get request. And in the preview, you can see the record we requested returning as a response. And that data is populated back onto the our form, and here you can see in the URL our dynamic value 3 is added. Now on submitting the form, data must be posted back to the server and saved to the server. Okay, and for put request it is very simple, just like get by ID, your URL for put means updating. Okay, HTTP put request means your URL slash ID and payload you have to pass. Okay, so let's work on that. So now get back to our update fruits.js, and for this submit button we have to add a new click event handler. Okay, for that what I will do, I will create a new handler like const update fruit handler. Okay, and an arrow function. So here first we have to prepare the payload. So to prepare the payload we know how to prepare, right? We can read from the form fields using this reference variable, and we are already prepared same kind of object in add fruit. So I simply copy that payload to save some time. Okay, and add it here. Here nothing is there, just our form field dot current means it will get control over the text box field. Dot value means whatever the value we are having, we are assigning to our payload variable. And here we are converting as a numbers because by default value returns string. Okay, now I have to call the Axios update request. So Axios dot put. See, put means update request. So Axios will provide separate method for each request type. Okay, and we know the put request should contain the dynamic ID value, right? So that in server, based on this ID value passed, that record will be updated. So what I will do, I simply copy the same URL from here. Okay, and second parameter payload we have to pass. Okay, and on successful update, on API successful, we must navigate back to our home page. For that, I will add a one more variable. Okay, like constant navigate, and that will have use navigate method. Okay, now I can use navigate variable, and simply slash, that means navigate to home page. Okay, I think we are done with the logic for updating. Yeah, I haven't registered, right? We have to register this event for submit click event. So on click. Okay, yeah, now test it, update operation. So let's try to update quantity and the cost of this grapes item. Okay, edit, quantity will be 5, cost will be some 750. Okay, if I click on submit, let me open terminal, sorry, developer tool, go to network calls. Okay, click on XHR. So click on submit. See, quantity value 5 and cost value 750 successfully updated. And if you check this URL, you can see the request with the ID in the URL, and request method is put, and in the payload tab you can see this is the data we posted to the server, and that is successful. Here it is returning as a response, and here you can see our data is updated. If you refresh also you will get same thing because that data is successfully saved in the server. Okay, that's all about the edit operation. Next we are going to implement the delete operation. So now we have to implement our last operation, that is delete operation, where we are going to add delete button on every item just like edit button. Okay, so instead of navigating to a new component for delete confirmation, what I am planning is on clicking the delete confirmation, I want to show a pop-up like a confirmation pop-up. That pop-up contains two buttons like cancel and confirm. If user clicks on the cancel, nothing will happen. If user clicks on the confirm, we are going to trigger the delete endpoint so that item gets deleted. Okay, so almost our logic will be implemented in the allfruits.js component. Okay, but what I want to do is for this pop-up, I want to use the React Bootstrap model. Okay, so I want to make that model as a separate component instead of adding that entire HTML code into our app allfruits.js. I want to make it as a separate and shared component. That means in our application, if wherever we want to show a delete a confirmation box, I want to show that component. Okay, let me create a shared component like delete confirmation. For that, go to components folder. Inside of it shared folders, let's create a new component file like delete confirmation. Okay, so let's define the component. Okay, and imaginary tags and export the component from this file. Okay, so now this is the component, shared component. Okay, now let's add the React Bootstrap model. Okay, so go to React Bootstrap, click on the components and go for model. Okay, here you will find number of examples. From that, just copy one thing. Okay, show hide. So this looks appropriate for me. Okay, copy this model, and paste it over here. And let's import the namespaces as well. So required namespaces, model and the bootstrap. Okay. Okay, now if you observe, model is a React Bootstrap model component. Header is for header, title is for title, body and footer it contains some buttons and handlers. So here what I will do, and here uh, show property is there, right? This property is a boolean. It takes boolean value. If it is true, pop-up will appear or show. If it is false, pop-up will be hidden. Same way hide. This is an event gets invoked when we click on a cross button. Cross button, generally cross button we like look at the top of the right corner, right, for a pop-up. So to close that, this is the event on hide. So for now I don't have any uh, handler, right? Let me give you some arrow function, empty arrow function. Okay, so similarly this close also will use the same as hide event method. Okay, so for now close, and this is the confirm delete button. Okay, confirm delete, and it should be a danger so that it appears in red color. Okay, and here also currently we don't have any event handler, just give arrow function. Okay, and here is the show button. So this should be come from the our parent component whichever invokes this delete confirmation, because it should be a generic, right? We will not write any variables or any static content here, because I want this component as a generic. So here I will add a property like show model. So this should be comes from the parent. So how from parent, how we can receive? We have to read it from the props. Okay, so props dot show model. Okay, and title I want to be dynamic. So same way everything will comes from the parent component. Okay, but here we are defining some model names, right? So these names should be used by the parent component to pass the data. Okay, and here title, and here props dot body. Okay, so what I will do, let me create a delete button. Now before creating delete button, let's go to allfruits.js. Here let's render that delete confirmation model. Okay, so delete confirmation model, import the component, and we know we have few properties we have to pass from our invoking component, right? Like show model, right? We know properties, component properties can push like this. Okay, here I have to pass the dynamic value, boolean value, true or false. Okay, so what I will do, I will create a state variable here. Okay, constant. So this left hand side property is our delete confirmation input properties. If you want, you can give same name here as well. Okay, I will give same name here. This is of my parent component property. Okay, show model and set show model. Okay, so what I will do, use state, sorry, use state, and by default pop-up should be hidden, right? When page renders, I will pass false. Okay, now I can use this state variable to this show model. Okay, so here one thing we probably confuse, assigning same names left hand side and right hand side. One thing we have to remember, left hand side properties are delete confirmation props properties. Okay, right hand side properties are parent properties. Okay, if you want to give another name, that is also absolutely fine. Okay, next property what we have, title. So your title is simple title, right? Whenever it will show, right? So I will directly assign the string here. No need to create a state variable or anything. Okay, it won't change, right? So what I will do, delete warning is my title. Same way body. Okay, props dot body here it is using, right? So body, or you want to delete this item. Okay, so that is my body. Okay, now let's add the delete button next to the edit button. Okay, here let's duplicate this button, some separator, and it should be delete, and it should be red color danger. Okay, now I won't use this anonymous function. Sorry, I navigate. I will create a new handler. So let me create a handler like open delete confirm model. Okay, and on deleting it should receive the ID. Okay, sorry, constant arrow function, and arrow function should input with ID value. Okay, now here what I will do, whenever user clicks on it, I am going to set my model. So I will set like true. That means I am updating the show model to true. That means pop-up will be displayed. Okay, let's register this open confirm delete to this model. Where is it? Here, let's remove. I will use arrow function only because I have to pass the input parameters, right? So in that case also we have to use the arrow function. So means you cannot pass like this. I have already mentioned in the expression braces, that are flower braces. If you call a function, function will be executed automatically when the component is rendered. That is why I cannot do directly like this. Okay. So what I can do, I can call a arrow function. Inside of it, I can call it. Okay, now let's check. On clicking the delete button, we are able to see the confirmation model pop up or not. Okay, so here is the delete button. If I click on delete, see, I am getting the model like title and the heading and close button. Now, if I click on close button, nothing is happening. See, nothing is happening, right? So now we will target on the close button to hide the model pop up. Okay, as we are making following some convention, let's add handler at the end of the each click event method. Okay. Okay. Now let's focus on the hiding of the model. So for that, constant close model handler. Okay. Arrow function. Here we are going to use same set show model and we will say false. But our close button or cross button exists here. HTML is in this model, but the function we are writing here because we cannot write here. Okay. If you write here, that will be a like static content. But our aim is this component should be generic. So what I will do, I will pass this function reference to the child component. That means I can use same name for the child property also, or you can use different name. I am using same name. So this is not this function. Okay, something. Okay, for understanding, I will tell you like I am creating a function reference like a. Okay, to that a, I am passing my close handler. Okay, now what happening means I am assigning the function to a. This is the function reference variable. So in the child component, what we can do, we can use on hide will be clicked for cross button right here. So props dot a. Okay, here also it should be closed, right? Here also I can use same props dot a. That means it is having the reference of this function, right? So it will work as a function here. So what I am doing, I am passing the function from the parent to the child. Okay. So I have given a for your understanding. What I will do, I will use same names for both ends. It is your convention. Okay. Okay. Now let's test whether we are able to close our model or not. Okay. Let's reload. Click on delete button. Click on close. See, it is gone. Again, click on delete button. Click on cross button here. See, that means our close handler is perfectly working. Okay. Now, finally, what we have to do, we have to work on this confirm delete button. So, on clicking this confirm delete, item should be deleted, means delete API call must be invoked. So this is a generic, right? I cannot write delete API call here. That means we have to write in our all fruits component and in a function, and that function should be passed to here just like the close model handler. Okay. So let's create a method like confirm delete handler. Okay. And it should contain ID as input property, but we cannot pass ID from here, right? So we cannot pass the input parameter. So what we can do, we can create a state variable here like item ID to delete. Okay, set item id to delete, and use state. Initial value will be 0, means there is nothing to delete. Okay. Now what I can do here on open confirm delete, we are passing id value, right? So here we can store the variable. Okay. So set item to delete value and store the id value. Now I have the id value set to the item to delete. So I can use this in the function directly. Okay. So now one more thing. On closing, I want to set the item to delete back to 0 on pop-up close. Okay. So like this, I can maintain the item to delete value in the all fruits component. So now we know delete endpoint here. Delete endpoint also just like our get or put URL slash ID value, but here there won't be any payload. Just a URL we will pass for delete endpoint. Okay. So Axios dot delete, see delete method, and pass the URL. Okay, go to our update and copy this URL and get back to our all fruits component and paste it over here, but it is not ID here, item to delete. Okay, that's it. So on success, okay, if the delete API is successful, first thing we have to delete means here these three items rendering from where in all component get API response stored in the all fruits variable. First we have to remove the all fruits variable from this array of variable. Okay, because we are deleting at the server, right? In single page application, we don't reload the page after the deleting operation. That means we have to manually omit the item that was deleted from the array. So for that, what I can do, set all fruits, okay, and I will use arrow function, which is good here, okay, and here previous state it will give. So what I will do, return previous state dot filter, okay, id not equal to item to delete. Okay, I'm setting new state for the all fruits by removing the deleted item from the existing state. Okay, so after deleting, I want to set delete to item to 0 back. Okay, add that line, and finally I want to hide the model, so I add this line as well. Okay, that's it, and we have to pass this handler to the our Taylor confirmation. Okay, so what I will do, I will use same names. If you want to use different names, you can use it. Okay, so this is this method. Right hand side is the method, left hand side is the reference variable. Okay, and here we can call props dot that method. So since these props we are adding here, right? So these are fixed names. So if you want to use this as a generic one, every component whichever want to use this confirmation box, they used to use these properties same way. Okay. Now let's test it. Okay. Go to network calls, clear. Let me delete the newly added item, this one. I'm clicking on the confirm delete. See, item is gone. And if you check the network calls, see, for delete API, we are sending. I want to delete this endpoint and request method is delete and status code 200 means that is successful. If you reload also, you won't see that deleted item. So from this, we can confirm that item is deleted at server as well. Okay. So that's all about CRUD operations in ReactJS application. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video delivered some useful content to you all. If you like the content, Please do support me by subscribing to my channel. Soon we are going to meet with new videos. Until then, signing off.